Yeah, Josh, that ski trip got debaucherous, dude. Your soul left your body, man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember it, so it probably didn't happen, right? So just to fill everyone in listening, we were just talking about day drinking in the afternoon and how, once you hit your mid 30s, early 40s, it either becomes one of two choices at the end of that day. It's either you go harder or you pack it in and go to bed at 8 o'clock. And on that ski trip, I did not pack it in.
No, you went harder.
And we ended up having a brawl. It was a good old time.
Yeah, shirtless wrestling matches on the floor. Oh yeah,
throwing punches.
Crazy.
It was more wrestling. It was a giant wrestling match that just got way out of hand. We're lucky we didn't incur a lot more charges from that Airbnb we were at.
That we are. Brady, man, welcome in.
Thanks,
long
guys.
Overdue, man, way overdue.
Yeah, that's my bad. I'm glad I was finally able to show up. Sorry about that.
I think didn't we cancel once because we had something going on. I don't remember.
We're known to cancel too, Brady. So don't feel the least bit bad. We're really starting to rack up the swans here on the show, though. But as Josh said to me earlier,
so are we.
We now have the Swan trifecta. I think we've now collected all 3 Swan holographic cards: Corey, Jan, and now finally yourself, Brady. So, pleasure to round out the collection.
Which one of these cards has the most prolific hair, though, is the real question, Dan.
It's got to be Corey.
Corey's got the luscious blonde locks, but you've got this wave going on that is,
is anyone's hair?
Who's hair way nicer?
Yeah, is either of your hairlines receding? I guess that would factor in significantly.
Oh yeah.
Yours looks pretty steady. I guess I'd have to look at Corey's again.
Yeah, Corey's got this kind of long wavy stuff that's going here. It's very, I don't know, it looks very thick. It's like much more romance novel cover than my hair.
Yeah, I can see that. He's got the long luscious locks that just dragging all the ladies.
Oh yeah, Corey's just he won on all fronts. He won the genetic pool. He's also like 6'3" and a big
prolific
dude.
basketball player as well. So we hear. Maybe we can verify that ourselves when we come to the Pacific Bitcoin conference later this year, but we'll see. I don't know how much of that video was AI generated and doctored. We can't really tell these days.
Was the contest rigged, or did he actually win that thing?
He actually won that, like straight up. I was there watching, and yeah, the most baller part of it was he was tied up. He had 1 ball left. He took 2 huge steps back so that he was standing on the Swan logo on the court. So it was like, I don't know, 25, 30-foot shot, and just drained it. It was so baller.
It's a power move.
Good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a power move for sure.
Yeah, to go back a second, how does it feel, Brady, to be objectified just as a podcast collector's item for us? You okay with that?
I'm okay with that, man. I've been hanging out with Aladdin and the Bitcoin trading cards crew in Telegram lately, and really getting into that project because it's just so much fun. I used to be into baseball cards, basketball cards, and Magic the Gathering, and so it's fun, to tap back into that stuff, 20, 25 years later, and have it be wrapped up in Bitcoin. And so I've been pushing to get a card in Series 3. Corey's got one in Series 2. So I love it. I love the idea of, as long as it's not an NFT, I'm down.
Heck yeah. Wait, tell us more about these cards. So what exactly are they?
Yeah, so it's a physical trading card series that dropped at Pacific Bitcoin last year in November. Series 1 was a kind of a small print because he was just getting things spun up, but the art is absolutely impeccable. It's amazing. The quality of the card prints really, really good. It's all education based. So on the back of each card, there's a paragraph of education about whatever's on the front of the card.
Yeah.
And the idea is to basically be able to give these things out to friends and family and kind of teach them. He calls them orange pill in a pack.
Nice.
He way underestimated just how collectible they would become. Bitcoiners love scarcity, right? And so there weren't that many boxes or packs of these things made. So Bitcoiners jumped all over it, and people who are into collecting already and really have driven up the price of these cards. Like there was a signed World of Rusty card, who's a Bitcoin artist, that sold for $700. There was a Greg Foss card that sold for $5,000 like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, there was a Max Kaiser card that sold for $5,000.
You haven't made it in Bitcoin unless you're in the pack, unless you're
when
on
do
this
we get our
seriously.
cards, Josh?
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know, man. It's hard to say.
We got to get you guys a card for sure. So it's a pretty cool project.
Was Foss cliffed out on that card? Was he at the edge of a cliff with skis on, like trying to rotate his hips over?
No, actually, he's like really buttoned up, and it's like business Greg Foss, which is actually kind of funny because that's not how we know him and have come to love him.
Yeah, definitely not. If anyone's ever heard him on this show, yeah,
I love it. I love it. So anyway, we might have to get like a wild Greg Foss card as well, and
for sure,
another version of it.
Yeah, when he gets led by Seb Bunny off the trail, off the cliffs.
Yeah, there needs to be
like, it's a rare one.
Bitcoiner attribute cards too, like Clipston's hair and shit like that.
Exactly. Yeah,
you can put Clipston's hair on Foss, and
Max Kaiser's shorts,
or shoes. Yeah,
or shoes.
Exactly. For sure. Yeah,
Dan from Blue Collar Bitcoin's penis is one of the most powerful cards.
Yeah, that's a series in and of itself, right there.
That's a tough play there.
But the guys are doing an educational series now, where they're just going to print a bunch of them. They're going to worry about scarcity and collectability. So the original mission of educating people will be fulfilled, and we can just get them cheap and give them out to people. So it's cool. It's a really cool project. So shout out to those guys.
Very cool.
Yeah, we'll link to that. That's cool.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself for someone that's been asleep at the wheel here, doesn't know who you are. We are longtime admirers, Citizen Bitcoin inspiration to some extent. You've collected some incredible early guest cards, by the way. I'm thinking back to your GG conversation, your Breathe Love conversation, some special conversations. Anyways, who are you? Introduce yourself to our audience before we get into this.
Yeah. My name's Brady Swenson. I got into Bitcoin in really early 2017, right around when it broke 1,000 again, which I think was late 2016. It's like January, February. And I had I looked up later, like a year later, that I had a Coinbase account from 2014. And I'd totally forgotten about. I remembered, and so I looked in my email history and I found it. And I had not had trouble connecting my bank or something, and so I just kind of gave up. So that's pretty interesting. There's a lot of those stories in Bitcoin where you're like, oh, if only when you had that very first touch and it just didn't connect with you at all. If only you had bought then. But
we've all got one.
You can't think that way. Yeah, you can't think that way. So I got in 2017 and did the gauntlet, the whole hero's journey of Bitcoin. Went through Ethereum and Cardano and a bunch of other coins, 6-7 months. And there was also the block size wars at the time. So there was that whole debate between Bitcoin Cash and Roger Ver and all the Bitcoiners. And so I was trying to make sense of all that. And I was going back and reading a bunch of like old stuff because that debate started, 2012, 2013, maybe even earlier than that. And by about November, I had pretty much decided I was on the Bitcoin side of the things. So during Thanksgiving 2017, I had about half of my coins in Bitcoin Cash and half of my coins in Bitcoin. And I remember I was at my mother-in-law's house Thanksgiving weekend or Thanksgiving week, and I was in this Telegram trading room. And one of the guys in there was like, Bitcoin Cash is like going crazy, up to the moon. It was like almost 50% of, or it was almost reaching parity with Bitcoin's.
We lived through that too.
Price.
We were early, right? But
that was
a
wild time, man.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was bizarre. It was totally wild. So I was in this trading room and somebody just said, this is going to be the most epic red candle in the history of crypto, meaning the Bitcoin Cash fall from this steep, rise. It had been going on for 6-7 weeks, but it was just going parabolic. And so I saw that and I was like, I'm out, sold all of my Bitcoin Cash for Bitcoin. It was a really, I didn't quite catch the absolute top, but it was like really, really good. I was so jacked. I stayed up all night. My mother-in-law wakes up at like 6 a.m. and starts making coffee. And I'm just like, oh man, I made so much Bitcoin last night. I had no idea. I was just like completely manic. It was hilarious.
She's like, what did my daughter do? God.
What's that?
She's like, what did my daughter do?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what is going on with this guy? I have no idea what's going on. Yeah, totally freaked her out. But that was it. Then I never bought another altcoin at that point. So it was like November 2017. I started Citizen Bitcoin in 2018. And I was in this co-working space here where I am now. And had a friend, and he was curious about Bitcoin. He used to see my trading charts, and that's why he initially asked me about it. And we had talked. We would go out to lunch and stuff. I was like, let's just start recording these conversations. Like, it'll be a forcing function for us to learn. Like, we need to know what we're talking about. Even if there's only like 10 people listening to us, like, we need to, put out a good product. So we need to know what we're talking about. And we did that for a whole year. Every other week, we sat down and did like 30, 40 minutes, went through the news and stuff like that. In 2019, I gained enough confidence and like felt like I learned enough that I could start interviewing people. And so in early 2019, I was like, look, I've got a list of 10 people in the space. If I can get these 10 people on my podcast, it's going to, take off. It'll establish the podcast. And within the first 20 episodes, I got 9 of those people. And it was astonishing, like how readily Bitcoiners were willing to come on your show. I was, absolutely nobody had no audience, anything. Yeah, absolutely. Just very, very cool and willing to help out another Bitcoiner is like, trying to make something work. And so I spent that year interviewing people. I went to Bitcoin 2019 the next year, and that's where I met Corey, and I had established kind of a name for myself at that point. And 6 months later was working with Corey and Jan to get Swan spun up. So pretty fun, wild ride.
Hell of a journey, man.
It was good timing. There was very little competition in the Bitcoin podcast space in early 2018 and in 2019. So
times have changed. Yeah, we talk like it's because we got in 2017, and one thing we say on here, for some people have been in way longer than that, but for a lot they haven't. It's unbelievable how much the media landscape, the information, the access to really good signal has changed. I mean, when we first got going, I'm sure you would resonate with this. Like Andreas Antonopoulos was really like tip of the spear with a lot of the education. And that's really was our go-to. I mean, you had your few podcasts, right? You got going, Marty, Peter was going. I don't know who else would be on that list, but it was really sparse and thin. Yeah, Lavera.
Yep.
But it is amazing how far it's come. I mean, it's in a lot of ways saturated, but that's a wonderful thing. Like people wanting to explore this amazing frontier with a microphone in front of their face is a wonderful thing. Have at it,
It's funny. The way you described your journey, I mean, a lot of it has parallels to what we did. We just had conversations at the firehouse about this and decided to play around with doing it publicly. But we had one singular goal or one guest in mind, and it was Preston Pish. That was it. We used to call him our white buffalo, and that was the entire goal that we had was to talk to Preston. And then we made that happen, and we've done it 3 times now, which is awesome. So we don't really know. We're kind of wandering in the desert at this point. Like we don't have a point. We're just having conversations.
It is funny blast, though. Man. I mean, that's where it needs to be. And I'm sure you'll resonate with this, Brady. Like it has to start and end as a passion project. Like
correct.
You're going to, if you're starting any kind of content creation, podcast, Substack, whatever, you need to want to be doing it. Cause you're going to be doing it for a while for free, no matter what. And even if you do start making money, it's still like in a lot of ways a labor of love. Like you're not going to produce a good product if the passion is there. And that's, we're a little more than 2 years into this. The thing the two of us say to each other all the time is the number one priority is us remaining passionate and excited about each weekly conversation. Because if that's not in place, it's not going to be good for us. We're not going to keep doing it. No one's going to want to listen.
It shows through completely from the product as well. Like you can tell if people are not engaged in whatever they're talking about. They're just going through the motions. It's like a zombie. It's like watching a zombie podcast or something. It's apparent when you're listening if people are having fun or they're just the dregs that are having to do it because they signed up for this and now they're kind of committed to it or whatever.
Have you guys ever had an episode or like a week where you feel like you hit a wall or you just went up for it?
We for sure had that. I mean, I think it's just a product of doing anything for enough time. Like you're going to run into some kind of roadblock or it's like writer's block in a way. Like you're just like not inspired for that period of time or whatever it is. But then you just kind of, I mean, for us, I think it's helpful that we only do this once a week. I think if we did it, like tried to push it to like 3 or 4 in a week, I think we'd really run into that wall. But it gives us enough time to breathe. It gives us enough time to like research, kind of learn about what we're talking about, the guest and whoever. And then it's just like a 1 a week makes it easier, I think.
Yeah, I think 1 a week is the right cadence, man. Like
I agree.
It's just scheduling is difficult. It's time consuming. Prepping is time consuming. the post-production and getting it up there, and then, marketing that, putting it on social and all of that. It takes a lot more time to, run a podcast than a lot of people might think.
It does.
For sure. I think one advantage we have that you didn't for a lot of your time is a partnership. Like it's helpful having two cooks in the kitchen. If one guy's able to research a little bit less that week, someone else can pick it up. If someone's, in our case, we both work different 24-hour shifts. So we have to record when I come off duty. Yep. So if I get smoked at night, last night, 4 calls after midnight, juiced up on Starbucks here. By the way, I'm probably going to have to pee like a Clydesdale with an enlarged prostate here before long. But it's helpful to have two guys in here and to double back. Like we are we don't, occasionally this may come across poorly to somebody that wants to come on here. We celebrate and appreciate everybody that wants to come on here, but the two of us are just like deeply committed to mutually being excited about who we're about to talk to. Because I'm sure you could say after doing this for years, if you're not pumped to talk to the person, it's hard to rally,
Dan and myself, Josh, talk a lot on this show about running a Bitcoin node. If you are a serious Bitcoiner and you want to verify, not trust, you will take this step at some point. For our node setups, we run software and hardware from Start9 Labs. This setup enables us to run a reliable and secure Bitcoin node. But then, if we so choose, experiment and graduate way beyond that towards many different areas of sovereign computing. You can download Embassy OS for free and install it on your own hardware, or you can buy one of Start9's plug-and-play devices. We highly recommend these devices. Start9 builds reliable and extremely easy-to-use products backed up with incredible customer support. Run a Bitcoin node, run a Lightning node, run a NOSTR relay. Take control of your photos, messages, passwords, pictures, and data, all on one device. Embassy OS operating system is the distribution platform open source software has been waiting for. Visit start9.com. We only recommend and endorse companies that we believe in, and Swan Bitcoin is a company we believe in. I have been personally using Swan to DCA into Bitcoin since May of 2020, when Bitcoin was the wee price of $9,500. Swan's interface and on-ramp is incredibly simple and user-friendly. With Swan, you can dollar cost average daily, weekly, or monthly, or conduct a smash instant buy whenever you want. Withdrawals to cold storage are completely free and can be totally automated, truly set and forget. Swan wants you to hold your Bitcoin keys, and support is one click or phone call away if you need help during this process. Buying Bitcoin is just the tip of the iceberg. Swan also has a Bitcoin IRA product, business and nonprofit offerings, resources for financial advisors, private services for high net worth clients, and phenomenal educational materials. Visit swan.com for more information. And at swan.com/fire, you can learn about and receive Swan Premium for 1 year.
True. Yeah, absolutely. Although when that does happen, and it does happen sometimes, you get in 10, 15 minutes and it's just like, okay,
you're back in it.
I'm here. I'm talking to a Bitcoiner. I'm really curious about their story. And Bitcoin just kind of that passion for Bitcoin makes it work and makes it happen, which is, the same way that things work at Swan too. Like we have such an amazing culture at Swan and everybody's on the mission. That's why it's so amazing, because we're all united about Bitcoin. Bitcoin does most of the work for us in terms of maintaining a super strong culture at Swan.
Yeah.
And that's, we wake up in the morning, you might be feeling it, not want to, get into the trenches that day, but you do it for Bitcoin and everybody's on the mission. It's great.
Extremely well said. I mean, this protocol and network just year over year continues to captivate us more and more. And I think it does so, Brady, in the sense that like we've known that this technology is vitally important for our demographic, like the middle class and below. But as the shit show gets worse and worse and things get more and more fragile, the two of us, our conviction increases that this really is an absolute necessity, at the very least, a necessary hedge for people that work for a living the way we do. I mean, it's important for everybody, but as we look at our peers in the circles we run in, I think both of us are just in continued alignment that we want to keep getting the message out because we view it as just so incredibly paramount that people start accumulating some of this.
Yeah, once you start realizing the just absolutely extensive impacts of fiat money, it weasels its way into everything, like even your own personal sort of sense of yourself, your relationship with your family. Like it gets into everything. It's not just like the economy. It doesn't stop there. It gets into everything. And it's, you have kids or something, or there's, maybe to me, it's the biggest motivational force in my life are my kids, like taking care of my kids and making sure that they are set up for success in their lives. And that is, to me, fiat money is one of the, if not the biggest enemy standing in front of them having a successful life and being happy and fulfilled. And it's just, that's how important money is to each and every one of our lives, not just the society itself. It's like, it's a very individual thing. Once you start realizing that, then it's like, okay, well, I'm going to the mattresses for this. This is about my kids' future. This is about just the humanity's future. So it's too much to just set aside. Once you've seen that, you can't unsee that. You've just got to fight. Yeah.
I mean, money is literally the language that we communicate value to each other through. And that sounds like we've probably said that 1,000 times on this podcast, but when you really understand that, these messages that we send each other are the underpinnings of the economy of value that move throughout the world and the underpinnings of it all. That money being broken affects things and cascades through the system, that like butterfly effect of it, and can really screw things up in ways that you may not even realize, 3 or 4 orders of magnitude away. So the fundamental problem that we have in so many things is the money, and fixing that. And it's such a trite thing to say at this point, but fixing the money really does fix a lot of the problems in the world.
Yeah,
it sure does.
Yep. Yeah. There's no doubt in my mind about that at this point.
Like Bitcoin's one of these kind of, this is true of a lot of big topics, but for me, it's just these simple truths, these simple realizations that you've made like 6 times at this point. Like back to your journey and our journey. You realized that, I realized it reading The Internet of Money 1 by Andreas Antonopoulos back in 2017 for the first time. Yep. It recurs like annually, where you come back to these realizations, and then you kind of see the global economic climate, society in general. These are broad sweeping words, but things really kind of playing out in the fragile and unsubstantive and concerning manner that you've sized them up to be. Right. And it just grows in conviction. Like the current banking crisis is just like A1. The message, the overarching message is fragility, and we're seeing time and time again right in front of our eyes just how exponentially increasingly fragile the system is. And the vast majority of society is just completely blind to these realities. Back to the people we report to duty with every day. They're reporting every third day, taking risks, thinking that the future's secure. And there's real world consequences to even what we've seen unfold over the last few years. Guys that retired 3 years ago have meaningfully lost buying power, lost freedom, lost leverage in life, with potentially 30 years ahead in retirement. And then you zoom, you move the pieces over here, and you say, there really doesn't have to be that much of a commitment. Someone can take a 1, 2, 5% hedge in this and probably be completely okay, or at least that's the working thesis. But yeah, I guess the unfortunate reality is that you can't force a horse to drink. You can do everything you can to lead them to water, and I'm sure you can think of examples in your life ad nauseum, Brady, that corroborate this.
Yeah.
But man, it is hard to make a Bitcoiner. You see the success stories on Twitter, but especially in these bear climates, it's challenging.
The crazy thing about these bank failures lately is, I think we're at aggregate almost at an equal level to the failures that happened in 2008, but nobody seems to care. Like, the mainstream media just kind of glosses over it. It's just kind of fugazi. Nobody's noticing. It's all getting swept under the rug. We're again reaching the debt limit, and we all know what's going to happen. They're just going to raise the debt limit again. We're going to get to 35 trillion or whatever. And this show just keeps going on. It's like I don't know if you guys have seen the Elvis movie yet, but his manager, who kind of hosed Elvis out of most of the money, or a good chunk of the money he made, was a professional carny who used to call himself a snowman, just snow everybody. It's like the Fed is just a professional snowman at this time. They're just snowing everybody into not understanding what's going on. It's all a big fugazi, and nobody's paying attention to the underpinnings of what's actually going on here in a scary way.
Yeah. Hence the need for education, which is a good, like, when did the education become such a prominent focus for Swan? You guys started as like Give Bitcoin, right? And then you morphed into like more of just a DCA. And now, like, when I think Swan Bitcoin, honestly, the headliner's education. When did that insert itself? How did it become such a priority?
It was from the very beginning, actually. So the premise of Give Bitcoin, which was the precursor to Swan, and I can talk about how we sort of transitioned into Swan from that. But Give Bitcoin, it was very simple. It was you log in, you put in an email address, you put in an amount of money to turn into Bitcoin, and an email goes to that recipient, the gift recipient. And along with that gift, every month they get a chapter of a book that takes you through Bitcoin. The original idea was that Bitcoin was held for 12 months by Give Bitcoin. So you couldn't withdraw until you received all this education.
Forced hodling, yeah.
It was kind of like a forced hodl, and basically it was a way to orange pill your friends and family. I'm going to give you some sats so you have skin in the game, and we're going to give you this education. You're going to get it once a month. It's going to be like, low bar, totally approachable, accessible education. It was, that was the idea from the beginning. So we just brought that through from Give Bitcoin to Swan. The reason we ended up switching to Swan is we had pickup on the products on Give Bitcoin. Bitcoiners were coming in and setting up recurring gifts to themselves to stack sats, right? Because we had this give a gift every year, so it's like for somebody's birthday or whatever. But you could also do it weekly, and people were stacking sats every week, so they're just using it as a DCA, and you could do DCA elsewhere. I think Coinbase had it at that time. It was actually not a part of trading platforms for the most part. But Coinbase did have it, but nobody wanted to use Coinbase. Everyone wanted to use a Bitcoin, company. So the appetite for a Bitcoin-based DCA app was huge. So we ended up rebranding to Swan and really focusing on that. And the pickup was it was just shocking, honestly, to the degree, the order of magnitude at which we ended up, adding people in those first few months. It was awesome.
I think something that is so underrated generally in investment is DCA, because it's basically an admission that you're not smarter than the world. You're not smarter than the market. Yeah. And it allows you to spend those mental cycles that you would have otherwise spent trying to time the market on things that are more important in your life. One of the things that I like to do with Swan is I pour it on a lot harder when Bitcoin is kind of shitting the bed. And then I kind of back off when Bitcoin's going well. And I feel like that satisfies the inside trader that I always have. You know what I mean? Like, I would always traditionally just go whole hog and just buy a huge chunk of Bitcoin when I thought it was a good time. And then you'd find out like 2 weeks later, like, oh shit, I fucked up. But just being able to like turn that sucker up to like 10 and then drop back down to 2, it satisfies my need to trade while also DCAing me in at a pretty decent level. So I really appreciate that.
So Josh, do you know that we have target buys now?
No, I don't. Tell me what that is.
Yeah. Target buy. So where are we right now? 28,000. So let's say, you're like, okay, Bitcoin's probably going to dip at some point. We're going to wick down to 26,000.
Okay.
So you just set a target at 26,000 and then Swan will automatically buy when Bitcoin, or if Bitcoin hits that price.
Nice.
It's pretty fun.
I like that.
But then Josh won't be able to click a button, Brady. That's the
problem. That's true.
No, I do. I think I'll probably implement that to a degree. The problem though is
it's a pre-click.
Might not hit that. You know what I mean?
You're right. Just have to tell himself it's exciting when he's doing it.
Sorry, Josh.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just saying, like, the only problem I have with that is if it doesn't hit that number, then I missed out completely. So I don't know. I kind of still prefer my method, whether or not it makes actual sense in my own head. It does. So
it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense.
Give us some more of your thoughts just on DCA in general, because it really is the bread and butter of Swan's business. And like, I found it comical and adorable, and in some ways frustrating, the people on Twitter in the heart of this bear market talking shit about DCAing. Like, the thing we have to be aware of in Bitcoin, and this is a wonderful thing, but there's a lot of people that this is the first asset they've meaningfully accumulated. They're brand new to investing. They didn't have any financial literacy before coming to Bitcoin. And so they're coming at market cycles with a brand new set of goggles on. They don't have any scars. They don't have any preconceived notions. But it's like, yeah, obviously we're at the absolute valley of a bear market. Like if you've been DCAing, the numbers aren't going to look great here. And I think it was Corey that even said recently, like, if you just zoom out a little bit, if you started a DCA at the absolute peak of like 69K, you're already back up in the green in this amount of time. High level thoughts from you about how you share, how you recommend, and your thoughts on DCAing in general.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's got to be kind of a core part of your strategy, right? I honestly don't do anything else. If I happen to come into a chunk of change, I'll smash it all at whatever, whenever I get it. I don't usually try to time the market. Like you said, like you just mentioned, if you over a long enough period of time, that moment where you bought, versus like it was $5,000 less, than if you were trying to time it, you're like, oh no, I missed it at 25 and now I'm buying at 30. And well, when Bitcoin's 500, $1 million a coin, like that's, it doesn't matter. I mean, you're going to have enough. You got enough. We're all going to have enough. I think we're going to be just fine. So I don't really worry about that much. When people like decide to come in and make their first buys, usually we recommend, you make a big lump sum up front, and maybe you spread that out over like 8 to 10 weeks or something, or you just smash it all at once, and then you set up your DCA from there. So that's usually the best way to do it. It's low overhead, cognitive load is low, like Josh was talking about, which is, can't be undervalued. Like, it's when I was trading in 2017, it was
stress, man.
Stress.
Yeah.
Absolute stress. And it didn't go well for me. Like I ended up basically where I had started, which I think was, a win to tell you the truth. And that was like after I paid my taxes and stuff, which were, an absolute shock to me. Like I didn't do my research about any of that stuff. I'd never really actively traded anything, no equities or anything like that before. It was all new to me. And so it was a bit of a shock on all the short-term capital gains taxes and stuff. But yeah, it was absolute stress. And my wife, commented on it. She's like, I don't want you to do this anymore. Like, I don't like the person you are when you're trading, like just tired all the time, grumpy, like just, falling asleep early, waking up, super early, going to bed super late, whatever it was just like abnormal sleep hours. I've got 2 kids. It was not good. So I would say don't trade. It's bad for you,
It's even more stressful. And at least at that time it was for me. There was this shitcoin called Verge back then. My brother gave me like $50 worth of it, and it was worth like 1/10 of a cent when he gave it to me, and it went up to like 30 cents. And I was like, oh my God, I'm sitting on like tens of thousands of dollars of this shitcoin. So I'm like, I got to sell this. And he gave it to me on a paper wallet. The problem was like, there was no easy way to get this shit off of the paper wallet. So it ended up being like a 2-day stress-filled event. And by the time I ended up selling it, it was worth like half as much as its peak. It was just a wild ride, but the stress can't be understated or overstated. It's just not fun.
You both alluded to kind of what I was mentioning earlier, which is like, for a lot of people, this is the first market they've meaningfully traded. For example, like Josh, I think you can probably think back on some conversations like the crypto craze of 2017 at our fire department, nuts. 2018. And like you had guys with some serious gains moving in and out of coins. And I remember one specific conversation explaining to someone, like mentioning capital gains. And they're like, what? Come again? I'm like, capital gains. They're like, what are those? I'm like, oh God. You know what I mean? So like there's a big education hurdle, even for a lot of these people in altcoins, just about basic tax law when it comes to moving securities around, which is just another reason why don't even get people into that messy hog pen. Just tell them to accumulate Bitcoin, whisk it off into cold storage, as Preston Pish says, fall asleep for 5 years and wake back up and we'll have a conversation.
Yeah. Exactly. If you don't sell, you don't have to worry about any of that nonsense. And I've been in the position where I bought at Swan, I bought at Coinbase, I bought at Strike, I bought at like 5 different places, and then sold, say, a bit of it for some reason. And then I'm like, oh shit, now I have to figure out my cost basis for this Bitcoin that I bought at 5 different places and sold at this other place, Cash App or whatever. And it's a nightmare. Just don't do it. Just don't
It
bother.
is an absolute nightmare. I've been through that whole song and dance.
Me too.
It's no fun.
Me too. One thing I appreciate about Swan, back to kind of the education, is just Corey's good at this. I hear you talk about it. I think of Elise Colleen too, when she was on here. We talked a lot about this subject, which is just like winning the narrative war. Like at the end of the day, it needs to be based in fact and logic and sound reasoning. But we do have a cultural narrative war that we need to wage and win. And so, like it or not, there are sound bites and heuristics that we need to throw out there that people can latch onto. Like for us, Bitcoin is middle class money, right? It's architected for your average carpenter and firefighter and tradesman, right?
Yep.
You know, I'm thinking about Swan themes. Like it felt like, you know, last year you guys kind of like Bitcoin, not crypto.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the narrative war in general? What are some new ideas or themes that you folks are kind of trying to hammer home as we try to get this thing out into the mainstream?
Yeah, well, meme wars are real, and Bitcoiners are pretty adept at meme warfare. And I'm not just talking about like the GIFs and stuff, which are fantastic and do certainly contribute to the narrative war in a meaningful way, but it's also just the messaging, straight up like classic public relations, marketing strategy, political type, positioning, things like that, where there's a well thought out sort of practice and professional approach to all of these things. And Bitcoin doesn't have a marketing department, but it does have a lot of people, just like it has a lot of developers who work on it. There are also a lot of people who are well versed in marketing and messaging, writing, podcasting, making art, etc. There's all kinds of ways to express these narratives, and we're getting pretty good at it. And I think we use Twitter as sort of the proving ground for these narratives. Which memes will win, which memes have the most impact, or whatever that kind of impact you're trying to get to. So I think that the Bitcoin, not crypto message is really aimed at the mainstream media, because the coverage always lumps in Bitcoin with crypto and completely confuses what these two very different things have to do with one another. There are similarities, but for the most part, crypto and Bitcoin are very different, if not opposite in many ways,
Yeah.
And so trying to explain that idea to the mainstream media, who are then amplifying narratives, that's what they do, right? That's what they try to do. And they will, and you can debate as much as you want how they choose those narratives to push or to amplify or whatever, even if it was supposed to be this kind of classical journalism approach where they're just trying to amplify, an even approach on both sides of a debate or something, or they're just have a straight up point of view that they're pushing. They are doing that. That's what they do, is push narratives onto people through all of their publishing and media outlets. And so I think it's important that we do need to influence the perception of these people who are running these companies, these media companies of Bitcoin, and also of politicians. And we have lots of people who are working on both. So last year, Corey was all over the mainstream media because he was calling out these, Ponzi schemes and, illegal securities, trading companies that ended up actually going down. He was, calling for that. And there were lots of people around.
Prophetic in retrospect.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's, he'll tell you that those calls were really influenced by other people who had, been sounding the alarm well before Corey, but he had a microphone, a megaphone, and was able to take those narratives and very effectively just demolish everyone. So his ability to spread a narrative on Twitter last year was incredible. He really just leveled up and
he really doesn't have any qualms about just kneecapping people, which is
just
hilarious to watch. And
yeah, it is.
Yeah, you team him and Yellow up, and the two of them could just crush this whole thing all the way down.
that would be something to see. I think Yellow works for us. I heard something on Twitter that Yellow is working for Swan, but I don't know anything.
Wait,
about
does anybody
mascot.
know who this mysterious Yellow actually is? Has he been demasked or doxed yet?
I don't know who he is. I don't know who he is, but he is
he's legendary.
A special person.
Yes, he is.
I do know that. So Corey was really pushing the Bitcoin is not crypto narrative, and I think we need to push that one like forever until crypto goes away. That one is, I think, one of the most important like existential risks to Bitcoin in terms of, it's not existential risk, but it's one of the risks that will lead us toward like, a bad outcome, like some kind of ban or effective ban on Bitcoin, from the US government.
Yeah.
That's where it would end up, I think. And we want to avoid that. We want to win the race to avoid the war, as Corey, talks about. And so that's what we can do with narratives. I think we have a chance to avoid that war. It's going to get dicey here over the next couple of years. Elizabeth Warren is really going headstrong into crypto. I don't think she's going to be the only one. She's raising the army, the anti-crypto army, and those sides will kind of be drawn. It's going to become increasingly polarized. I think the path for us is to try to maintain some bipartisanship around Bitcoin. It's leaning ever more over to the red side of the aisle, and I think we need to get some key Democrats to really understand, like some pro-tech Democrats that to really understand that we need to keep this technology on American soil and we need to innovate here. Otherwise it's going to go somewhere else and we're going to, be at risk. Our economy will be at risk. Our national security will be at risk. We need to keep the innovation happening here as much as possible. I think that's a narrative that we can sell to Democrats. Yeah.
One of the most exciting companies and projects that Josh and myself, Dan, have come across in the last few years is Crowd Health. If you're already familiar with Crowd Health and have interest in checking it out, then use code BLUE for a significant 3-month trial discount. Healthcare is an incredibly confusing, stressful, and cumbersome space to navigate. Crowd Health provides a remarkable and workable alternative to traditional healthcare setups for a fraction of typical premiums. It's essentially the decentralization of healthcare. You can leverage the power of Bitcoin alongside healthcare crowdfunding to put decisions about your health back in your hands. Each member gets access to great healthcare services as well as their own dedicated care advocate that will negotiate your bills and find members the best doctors and hospitals. Go to joincrowdhealth.com to learn more. And if you're interested in the Bitcoin-specific crowdfund, go to joincrowdhealth.com/Bitcoin. BCB listeners can enjoy healthcare freedom with code BLUE to get your first 3 months for a substantial discount at $99 a month. That is code BLUE. Crowd Health is not health insurance, which we feel is a wonderful thing. If you have healthcare needs or concerns, seriously, give Crowd Health a look. The Blue Collar Bitcoin podcast is brought to you by arguably the most legendary company in Bitcoin, CoinKite. They are the producers of the renowned Cold Card, the world's most trusted and secure Bitcoin signing device, built with a plethora of features fit for Bitcoin beginners all the way up to the most advanced of users. This device is a one-stop shop for your Bitcoin custody needs, and something the two of us have trusted for years. CoinKite also manufactures the Block Lock, a gorgeous e-ink digital display art piece sitting in the background of what seems to be every serious Bitcoiner on the planet. Block Lock can be programmed to scroll through key Bitcoin metrics including price, hash rate, next halving date, and much more. Boy, oh boy, will this thing look good in your living room or office. They are also the makers of many other security and fun products for all users, no matter their technical aptitude. Support our show and get a delicious discount on CoinKite products by following our affiliate link on the screen and in the notes, and using code BCB for 5% off the Cold Card.
Yeah. Follow up on a couple of your points, which I thought were really good. First of all, let's talk about Elizabeth Warren. To give her a little bit of a bone here. Yeah. She's creating an anti-crypto army.
Yeah.
Understandably so, because in her mind, Bitcoin and crypto mean the same thing. And I think the three of us are in alignment. Certainly Swan and Blue Collar Bitcoin are in alignment that these tools and these assets, just as you mentioned earlier, are not just different. They are completely disparate, almost on the opposite side of the ethos and purpose and functionality and risk profile of Bitcoin. She has these all coupled together, and she wants them gone just like we do. The problem with her understanding is that Bitcoin's lumped in there. And that's why I, totally agree that the Bitcoin, not crypto, at the very least, the medium-term goal is just to separate these two terms instead of them being synonymous. But I get it. Why she's anti-crypto, especially after what we've seen the last few years.
Absolutely. I'm anti-crypto too, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
But we got to understand that these two things are not the same.
For sure.
They both use cryptography. Like, that's pretty much it.
That's about it.
That's kind of where it ends. Their goals are completely different.
Yeah, I mean, us and a bullfrog, Homo sapien and a bullfrog have a lot of the same DNA too.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing I was going to say is that the bipartisan comment is so true. And the more bipartisan divide that exists, the less likely Bitcoin is to get protection legislatively and legally, and the more likely it is to be attacked, in my mind. And that's why groups like Bitcoin Policy Institute, Satoshi Action Fund, you guys, I mean, the list can go on and on. You can sit in your basement and just try to separate completely from the system, but this is the water we swim in. And if we want to stay afloat, we need to remain buoyant. And there are real life regulatory risks. Like Bitcoin's going nowhere on a decades long time frame, but us as Bitcoiners, me, Dan, as the father of two and the husband and the person trying to provide with my own stack, I can be meaningfully affected in terms of the opportunities I have, the risks I take on if the regulatory climate goes completely sideways. So I do encourage listeners and anyone invested in this space, like, don't be too cool for the regulatory, legal, and legislative conversation surrounding this, because it is really going to affect your life.
Yeah,
if you're a hardcore Bitcoiner in your stack.
And you can make a difference. I mean, because not that many people are pretty apathetic. So not that many people actually take time to call or write to their representatives or senators. And so, you can make a difference if you're active and talking to them and say, look, I'd love to talk to you about this. I study this stuff all the time, or this is my job. I work in this industry and I'd love to get a moment of your time to talk about this really important technology, get 15 minutes, and it does make a big difference.
I think there's also the problem that we have with a lot of politicians is that they're just old. I mean, not to insult, but it is just a fact. Like, when I'm 70 years old, I don't expect to be understanding the latest technological trend as well as I might now. And I don't expect myself to understand it around 37 or 8 that I did when I was 20. You know what I mean? Like, this is just a generational gap. It's like, I'm not expecting to dress stylishly these days when I'm almost 40 years old. And I don't think Elizabeth Warren has a vapid clue about what she's talking about in the context of this environment. But she's probably aggregating all of her opinions from staffers that might have political leanings one way or another. It's just hard to expect people that are in their 70s to actually understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
And I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed aside from this, obviously. And they're also going to be inundated very soon, I suspect, with a lot of artificial intelligence stuff that is potentially going to sideline a lot of this stuff, because I think that might be a lot more prescient than worrying about Bitcoin and crypto for the meantime. But who knows? But there's a lot of interesting stuff moving at the moment that is going to require their understanding. And it's all technological. And I don't expect them to actually have a clue as to what's really going on. It's scary in that aspect of it.
Yeah. One thing I agree with you on there very strongly is it would be great to get the 70 and 80-year-olds out of public government. Like,
there should be at least a cognitive test.
You guys have
minimum.
been in control for 40 years, right? Like, can we please give the Gen Xers and younger a chance to make some decisions about the way we should live? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. But people are living longer now, so it's like, they were born at a time where they started, engaging in public work at a relatively young age or whatever, and are, living to be 70, 80 years old and able to be active somewhat in some cases, in those, in their older years. So it's just, I'm tired of it, man. I think we have a minimum age. I would love to see a maximum age to put in,
or at least some,
I think it'd be fair.
At least term limits for senators, like you shouldn't be there for 30 or 40 years. That's insane.
Yeah. That seems like low hanging fruit.
And when you're making what are they? I'm not even sure exactly what their pay is. It's probably like $200,000 or something. But how are these people aggregating $100 million estates, or not estates, but like aggregating that kind of money in the 20 years they've been there? That doesn't make any sense at all. But
so what started turning me sort of down the government is broken and like road, because I grew up in a democratic, very progressive family, and that lots of political activity. People like my dad was a press secretary for a governor here in Kansas. My grandfather held office, stuff like that. So and around the time of Occupy Wall Street, I read this book called not Occupy, called Republic Lost by Lawrence Lessig. He's a law professor, and it just really opened my eyes to how broken our government is at this point. And so I started to become less political in terms of left and right, red and blue, and more political in the sense of like, okay, our government's broken and here's how we're going to fix it. So I was very issue oriented, and Bitcoin like furthered that for me. So I don't play politics. I don't play parties and party politics anymore at all. It's like, to me, it's like watching a football game or something. It's like sports. It's like, it's fun for some people to watch it as
it's
from
entertainment
that point of view. It's entertainment, but it's not serious. It's not something serious to actually like improve people's lives.
Yeah, the problem is that these clowns that entertain us can actually meaningfully impact our lives, unlike the football players. That's the problem that we have. And
but I think there are people who take it seriously. It's just, it's not completely shot, is my point. And this book really opened my eyes and gave me some hope. I'm like, okay, here's some things that we can actually do, from very small actions to very big actions to try to fix this thing. And so I've been working on some of those, for the last 10 years, wherever I have time. But you should check out that book, Republic Lost, if anybody's interested.
We'll check it out.
In this
Put
kind
it in
of
the show
stuff.
Notes.
Yeah. Here's the other thing about Bitcoin. Yes, there are a lot of, you could say, free market, capitalist underpinnings that appeal to a lot of libertarian minds, more conservative minds. But when you really think big picture, it offers something to all viewpoints. Like, let's just take the progressive side. It really has the potential to carry out the root goals of progressives, those often hitting on fairness, greater prosperity, less wealth inequality. Like, a lot of progressives are pretty fed up with the system, and they're trying to fix the system with the system. And so this is why I like that. I haven't read it yet, but like the progressives' case for Bitcoin and those conversations of even, bringing people in on the left, back to the narrative war and the bipartisan aspect, because I think we are remiss to just label this thing conservative. I mean, let's think HRF, Gladstein, that whole dynamic, right? From a human rights standpoint, and a human inclusion standpoint, a lower class perspective, a middle class perspective. I mean, I published an article in Bitcoin, 10,000 word piece last year, specifically about why this is such a magnificent empowerment tool for the middle class. So even coming from our lens, like, sometimes I look at it and I think, man, this thing has moved way too far right, and we're dismissing how much it offers to moderates and people on the left, if we're going to even use those categories. But this is just such a base layer, back to how you kind of said it, Josh. It's just, it's rewriting and improving a fundamental form of human language, and we should depoliticize that as much as we possibly can, in my opinion.
It's interesting to watch how it's kind of transpired over the last, I mean, I've only been involved in it for around 6 years, but the feeling that I get is initially this was all very, computer libertarian type people, computer science people that are very libertarian leaning, right? And so that transpired, and then I think the class of 2017 or that around about that time was more the conservative leaning type libertarian, kind of bleeding over into mainstream conservative views. And now in the last year or so, I mean, we see this progressive Bitcoin book. We see a lot more people on Twitter kind of professing this. I think Gladstein's a good example as well, even though I don't know what his politics are, but I know how he views human rights. And that's a lot more from the lens of a progressive viewpoint. And so you see kind of this bleed from the libertarian fringe, if you want to call it that, towards mainstream conservatism, and now even into progressivism. And hopefully that completely bleeds orange all the way across that spectrum. But we'll see how it goes. But I think you guys are doing a good job of getting that narrative out there for sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Gladstein might be, man. I know you're a huge Gladstein fan. We are too.
He's my man. Like,
he's the GOAT in your view.
I would.
Who's the GOAT? We need this out of you.
Well, I'll put it this way.
We should all pick our GOAT. I got to key in on this. Go ahead.
If you were going to give me the opportunity to put one Bitcoiner on a huge platform, I would pick Gladstein in almost every case. Like, you'd have to tell me exactly what it was, and it might be a little different depending on the audience.
Joe Rogan.
But yeah, I'd put Gladstein on there.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting Rogan episode.
Oh man, it would be killer. Yeah. I just think that message, the message that Bitcoin is freedom, is the way to depoliticize this. It's not everyone on both red and blue teams appreciate freedom. They don't want, that's what this country was founded on. Right. And it's the word or whatever has sort of been kind of taken by the right as a rallying cry for the red team more than the blue uses it as a rallying cry. But that's silly. That's the sports. That's what I was talking about. That's the games.
Right.
If you want to look at it seriously, everyone wants freedom for human beings, right? You don't want autocracy. You don't want to have any tyranny. Basically, you want to fight tyranny. That's what democracy is about. That's what republics are about. And so I think that's the way to depoliticize it. That's the message I would take to the masses is this thing is about freedom. Fiat money is about tyranny and Bitcoin is about freedom. So let's make that the fight that we are looking at. Just take it straight up to the top.
It's impossible to come up with a good argument against that. I mean, the problem between the left and the right, in my view, is that they both want freedom in different ways. Like, the right wants guns, the left wants abortions or whatever. And that's just the first thing off the top of my head. But one wants to restrict the rights of the other in some way. They want to curtail them. And the perspective I have is allow people to do, as long as you're not hurting anyone else. Like, why is it bothering you what your neighbor is choosing to do, as long as it's within their own purview? And I don't know. It's hard for me to kind of wrap my head around how anyone doesn't retain that point of view.
Also, guys, let's be on the same team, even if we have different viewpoints. We could have this is where the two-party politics and the bifurcation and everything is starting to get really reprehensible and just toxic and obnoxious in the United States. Is like, let's just take the Bitcoin community, for example. We can be two Bitcoiners on the same mission and have totally different views on the Second Amendment. Like, we need to be better at this and saying that the chances that we're going to align down a list of two-party issues are zero, right? So let's just get more used to agreeing to disagree and staying in community with one another and rowing the boat in the same direction on changing the way that value is transferred across time and space, and shelve a lot of these other issues. You see a lot of this animosity and sort of dogmatic binary thinking on Bitcoin Twitter. It feels like it's escalated to me the last couple of years. And I think at some point we have to just say, let's just shut the fuck up. Let's get a little kumbaya session in here, hug it, and let's move this narrative.
This is what happens during bear markets, though. This is what happens during bear markets.
Yeah, I agree. But definitely, like, just speaking to society in general, Dan, on what you were just saying, I think a lot of it is indicative of just the way we communicate with each other. Like, someone used the example, I listened to something the other day, like, you wouldn't just, if someone cuts you off in line at the bank or something, maybe the bank's a terrible example for this podcast, obviously, but they walk in front of you, cut you off. You don't flip them off to their face. You don't do that, because that's just not a social norm. But if someone cuts you off in their car in a line, like, somehow that's normal and you can flip them off because it's less personal, right? And then on Twitter, it's an order of magnitude less personal, right? So you can tell someone to go fuck themselves. You don't see them, you don't know them. They're just some picture, GIF, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
So it's like it's just the less personal interhuman relations that we seem to be having in the last 10 to 20 years, just pour fuel on the fire of people hating each other. And most of these people you disagree with, if you sat down and had a real conversation with them, you probably would be able to find some common ground.
As I say with guys that get into it at the firehouse that have, in our career, Brady, when you get hired at a good agency, you stay for essentially 30 years, and you'll have guys that have quote unquote hated each other for 12 years. And you're like, if these two fuckers just went on a canoe trip, went up to the Boundary Waters and camped for 3 days, they'd probably come back loving each other again. You know what I mean? Let's hug it out here. All right, to transition a little bit, we want to hear a little bit about what's going on at Swan. Let's talk about Swan priorities, what you're working on. Well, let's start there. You're done with Swan Signal, which it's in good hands, but it was a bummer to see you go. Talk to us about that transition and what you're up to specifically, and then more broadly Swan's goals in general, maybe the next year or two.
Yeah, so Swan Signal actually started. I ran both Citizen Bitcoin and Swan Signal for quite a while, and it started on like March 29th, which was the day after the big COVID crash where we hit 3,800 or whatever it was.
What a day to launch!
And well, we hadn't planned it, but the sentiment on Twitter was getting pretty down, pretty low, and like even Friar Haas, who was like massive Bitcoin bull DCA champion, and kind of one of the like founding spirits of Swan, because he was such a DCA champion and he really wanted companies to build this thing out. He was wavering. He was like, "Oh no, I'm not, guys. I'm losing conviction," which was a big signal. So I was like, I wrote Corey that night. I was like, "We got to go live tomorrow. We just got to go live on Twitter and YouTube and whatever else, and bring in some friends and try to rally the troops a little bit, bring up morale."
Beach.
Yeah, so we had like Guy Swan and John Vallis and Friar Haas came on, and Gigi and Jan and Corey and me, and we just talked for like 2 or 3 hours about Bitcoin, and this is just temporary blip. It's a great time to stack sats, and here's the way it's going to be in like a year or two, and all of that stuff. And then it was just like so great, and people responded so well to it that the next week I did it again with, I think it was Parker Lewis and Marty Bent and me. And I was like, okay, well, this is the format. We're going to get 2 guests and a host, and we're just going to have conversation. There's nobody else in the space doing this, and I'm going to keep it like a stable of guests. There's like 30 or 35 people that will ever be on this podcast, and some people come on and off the list or whatever, but it's going to be kind of like Meet the Press, which I think is still running, as the longest running TV show ever at this point, where they just have like 30 people they bring on as rotating guests from the media and stuff. So it took off and was so much fun to do, like really fun to do that format and find pairs of people to put together. That was really fun. And so we made some really cool shows, and it was a couple of years. Made 96 episodes, and then handed it off to Sam Callahan, who is doing a fantastic job with it now. And like, I think it was Andy Edstrom on the last episode said, "Brady, I'm sorry, but a smarter, better looking, and younger version of you came along, so you're out."
Yeah.
Something like that. Anyway,
I don't think he has the hair to compete, though, to be honest.
He's doing all right. So yeah, it was great run. So I ran marketing for Swan for a long time. Then we got pretty big, and so we got big enough to kind of separate concerns a bit. And so in November of last year, I started heading up the Swan Media team, which we developed to just run all of our media production stuff and all of our shows, everything. And that was fantastic. I was like, yes, this is exactly what I want to do next. And then we scored a fantastic hire from Bitcoin Magazine, had to let P go. And P was on a critical show of Bitcoin Magazines, and he was just like a freaking genius and all around cool guy. And so we ended up picking him up. And so after a couple of months, he was on my team. After a couple of months, it was clear that like P could just run media, and Corey was trying to hire somebody to run marketing for Global Wealth. And so he just said, like, we're not finding anybody that we're in love with, and you just need to come over back over to the marketing side. So that's where I am now. Brandon Quidham, who many listeners will probably know.
He's been on here recently.
Yeah. So Brandon runs marketing for Swan Personal, and then I run marketing for Swan Global Wealth. So Swan Personal is like our DCA, our app, our kind of core product. And then we have 3 products that are more kind of financial offerings. Swan Advisor, which allows financial advisors to buy Bitcoin on behalf of their clients and manage their Bitcoin portfolio. great piece of software. We've got, quite a few financial advisors using that now. And one of the things I love about that is it's a one-to-many product. So you're orange pilling, you get one financial advisor, you're orange pilling 50, 100 people. And, they're a long-term customers. They're putting together IRAs. They're, putting this into long-term investment portfolios. And so they're stacking regularly and they're learning, they're getting all their education as well. We have Swan Business, which serves, exactly what it says, serves businesses, allows people to stack on their treasury. And we also have a Bitcoin benefit plan, which is becoming increasingly popular. Also a one-to-many product. So you create a benefit plan for your employees. They get an X amount of Bitcoin every month. It's a fringe benefit. And it's great for employee retention. People love it. They get all the education as well. So another one-to-many. You get one company on board. You might get 10 people getting the benefit. You might get 500 people getting the benefit. Pretty cool way to orange pill people at scale. And then we have Swan Private, which is our high net worth, family offices, trust, etc. Division. Very hands-on concierge service. And it's really grown like gangbusters over the past 18 months. And so it's become a very significant part of our business. So I'm working with those three divisions of the company on marketing and hiring right now, actually, a director of marketing to work with me directly. And it's on bitcoinerjobs.com. If anybody happens to listen to this and that fits your description and something you'd be interested in doing, would love to see your resume. So go to bitcoinerjobs.com and check out the director of marketing position for global wealth. So that's what I'm doing now. That's Swan. We've got IRAs now. We're really pushing that hard. That is just taking off. Absolutely taking off. Yeah, totally taking off. And it's an absolutely incredible product. The experience is phenomenal. It is so easy and so fast. If you're a Swan customer, you can create an IRA in like 30 seconds. It's like 2 clicks. And you have an IRA and then like 2 more clicks and you can have, Bitcoin in there.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing with all the complexity that they've hidden behind this like really simple UI is absolutely amazing. Same thing with the business onboarding. I mean, everything is all of our products are just like really easy to use, which is and fast and quick and makes things where our onboarding time for the regular Swan app is super simple. We have a low KYC onboarding process now. So it's like the last 4 of your social, email address. And you can start buying up to a certain limit of Bitcoin, at which you'll have to do a little bit more of the KYC with the ID and stuff. But you can get in there and buy a good chunk of Bitcoin, like $5,000, without having to do the full KYC now. So it gives people a chance to really get their taste, get a little bit of that skin in the game. At a low level, you can onboard somebody. You download the Swan app, and within a minute, they're buying Bitcoin as you sit next to them. So it's a great orange pill app at this point.
The Bitcoin conference is coming this May in Miami, and you do not want to miss out. Dan and I will be there. This 3-day event is the ultimate destination for anyone looking to stay ahead of the curve and work in the industry. Industry Day tickets are available for those who want to network with like-minded professionals and learn from the top experts in the field. For those who want the ultimate VIP experience, the Whale Pass is the way to go. With exclusive access to private events and top-level speakers, you'll get the inside scoop on the latest trends and insights in the industry. So why wait? Get your tickets now and join us at the Bitcoin conference in Miami, where the future of finance is being shaped today. Use code BCB23 to get 10% off tickets, and we will see you in Miami.
Getting skin in the game. I love that. Yeah. And I think, we have a lot of examples, but Josh Bryan at the Firehouse the other day, he got his first skin in the game, and I watched him, in front of me, directed him to Swan. Mm-hmm. You're watching this dude set it up in the span of probably realistically 3 minutes. And even though he's putting a small amount in there, it's like now he's invested. Now he's engaged in the learning process. And that's where a buying platform with education is so powerful. And there just is no substitute. People get that little amount. At the beginning, they start looking at the numbers, but they're more receptive to hear, hey, what's this thing all about?
I really do think that that's what separates you guys primarily. And that's why I tell people to go there, especially like my parents, because that they're not going to be able to buy some bullshit. They're going to be exposed to educational content that's going to be relevant and that's going to help them understand what they're doing. And that's key. Like the skin in the game, number one. Number two, actually understanding why it is they want to own something like this. And then number 3, that you guys encouraged people to withdraw their Bitcoin and cold store it, which is also, that's like the trifecta of the best place to buy Bitcoin. So
number 4, not being able to sell it.
Oh yeah.
Trapping
you
them,
mentioned
you have to write into customer service to sell your Bitcoin. No sell button.
we were
no
talking
sell button.
Customer
we were
service
talking about
like,
Joe Rogan.
God damn it.
If I had to pick somebody to go on there, man, just back to the Joe Rogan thing for a second.
Yeah.
I think Gigi, but Joe Rogan and Gigi would both have to do mushrooms. Like that would be
that
probably wouldn't be the best orange pilling episode, but it would be one hell of an entertaining episode.
I want to see that as like a
cosmic,
full HBO documentary or something like that. That's what I want to see.
That would be exceedingly entertaining from my perspective.
Here's my suggestion for Swan development, Brady. You folks generate a GG AI that everybody has to interact with before they sell their Bitcoin. So before they get to customer service, they just see a green dude show up on their screen and scream at them about why this asset's so fundamentally profound for humanity.
Yeah. And then deep dives into physics and somehow dovetails that in with something else that just you never thought were two disparate acts and can write something completely elegant about it. Yeah, and you're like, Gigi. Wow, that guy is so cosmic.
Our deep dive with Gigi on this show, we went, 3 hours or something. We actually, speaking of needing to take a piss, I think we labeled the episode pre-piss and post-piss.
Yeah, we
Gigi.
did.
God, he was amped up. I wonder if he was on mushrooms, Josh, because that is maybe one of our classics. Is just him going. He'd recently put out Bitcoin is Time, and he just teed off, man. It was. If you haven't listened to that one, I think it would be up there.
I will. I haven't listened to that one. I definitely have to do that. Yeah. I mean, he was at Swan when he wrote that. He published it originally on the Swan blog. He has it on his site now too. But definitely had some conversations with him about that piece while he was writing it. I would love to listen to that episode. I'm going to do that tonight. Yeah. Gigi's a special one.
He is.
He was one of my very early podcast episodes on Citizen Bitcoin, and it was his second podcast episode ever.
Yeah, I've listened to it. It's amazing.
It's super early. He had just written his book, which you can't see it on the camera, but I have it on my shelf right behind me.
21 Lessons.
It's my favorite Bitcoin book. His writing style is just so cool. You know, it's kind of poetic. It's kind of like the literary style is fantastic, and he does it so succinctly, and just in an entertaining way. It's fun to read it. So anyway, I love the book, 21 Lessons, and that episode we just went through the whole book basically, a couple hours. Fantastic. The other one you guys were asking about my favorite podcast episodes, so that would definitely be one. Speaking of Gigi, and the other one. It's probably just another straight up education podcast with Breedlove, where we just went through the What is Money, and we ended up naming his show, his podcast show, What is Money. But we just went through the first principles of money, and it was a fantastic episode. Again, 2 hours. I think if you listen to those two episodes, 3.5 probably hours worth, like you'd be in really good shape.
Breedlove is such that guy is just a well-rounded beast of a man. Like, somebody posted something of him on Twitter, saw him at the gym or something. The dude's an animal. Yeah, he's an absolute animal, physically and mentally. It's astounding that people like him exist.
Here's the thing about the way he communicates, and this stood out. It stands out to me listening to him, and then when he came on here too, like the way he can architect a conversation, remember where he's been, have a roadmap to where he's going amidst a casual dialogue is unreal. Like he really, he just absolutely ties together a really cohesive outline somehow in the middle of an hour and a half, 2 hour long conversation. What he did with you, what he did with Preston and BTC 001, the first one of Preston's episodes, what he did with Lex Friedman. The
Lex Friedman was next level.
Yeah, it was.
It was next.
He was
fucking level.
He was like lucid the entire time. Like it was a tour de force. That
had to be mushrooms again. That's basically all these.
Anyone
guys,
that comes off as super intelligent, they must be on mushrooms. Next time we get Gigi on this, Dan, we should consider doing mushrooms with him.
We would never, obviously,
no,
just
because
of what we do for a living. But theoretically, it would be a great idea. It would be a great idea. All right. Other than me beating Corey at the 3-point contest, talk to us about Bitcoin, Pacific Bitcoin 2023.
That's adorable.
What's
you
gonna
got a
go
shot,
down?
Dan? Can you shoot?
I used to be okay. I just put my foot in my mouth.
No. He can. He's just being humility. He's just
I
has
used to
humility.
have a little
Let's
bit
put
of
him
a
up there.
jumper, but it's Brick City. But yeah, talk to us about what's going on here, and how much of the company's energy is channeled towards this. How big is it going to be?
Yeah.
What are you working on for this year?
Yeah. So in terms of company energy, it just really ramps up within like the last 3 months. So right now it's kind of chill on the PB front, which is nice. Last year we really only had about 6 months, and when it really comes down to it, like 4 months to put everything together. And it was
It's
really,
insane
really
that
hard.
you executed that.
Oh gosh. It was really, really hard especially on the sponsorship sales front. Ticket sales was okay. But sponsorship sales was tough. It was tight. And, we were coming into, crypto was melting down. It was coming like a kind of bear market, just more broadly in the macro sense. And anyway, it was tough. But this year we didn't have any proof of work. Like we were just telling people, hey, we're going to throw this cool conference. It's going to be great. know? And so now we
come to the Fire Festival,
Yeah. Who knows? But now we have just absolutely hit it out of the park last year. And so we have that. It makes it a lot easier. So we're selling sponsorships now, and we've already sold almost as many tickets as we did last year. So we're doing really well. And we have Kristen Thompson, who just spearheaded everything last year. She's now head of events. Well, she was head of events last year. She just wasn't called it yet. And so she's also going to be responsible for our presence at MicroStrategy World right now, actually, happening right now. And Bitcoin 2023, all of the events we're involved in, and head of PB, of course. So it's gonna be awesome. I mean, we're calling it the festival this year. Speaking of festivals, we're actually going to call it the Pacific Bitcoin Festival because it just definitely fits better than a conference. Like it wasn't really a conference. The vibe last year was very much a festival, and so we're just going to embrace that. We're going to have more entertainment. We're going to find more passion zones, as Corey calls them. So basketball was definitely a big passion zone for us last year at PB, and really is increasingly becoming that for us, for Swan as a whole. Like we're just really just kind of systematically getting into the basketball culture and world more and more, which is pretty cool. We have a strategy for that in particular, so we're working on that. So we'll have the basketball court. We're going to have more music, more art, more activations in general from sponsors, like fun, like surfboards and mechanical surfboards and whatever fun things like that, dunk tanks and kind of
we teach a bunch of
stuff.
non-physical Bitcoiners how to actually get up on a surfboard and surf, like people that have no athletic ability at all.
Gonna have to sign waivers.
Like myself, I tried surfing in Hawaii, man. I got nothing. I suck at surfing.
Destroy backs.
Yeah,
we're gonna. Josh, we're gonna be there. Yeah, we're gonna be there, folks. Josh is gonna grow a mustache. I think we're gonna alternate mustaches at the conferences.
I don't know about that.
I'm gonna go to Miami with a mustache. Josh is gonna go to Pacific Bitcoin with a mustache, and we'll just kind of keep flip flopping. We're pumped though.
Yeah, it's gonna be fantastic.
Very cool.
But and we're doing everything. The Swan Dome is gonna be bigger. We're gonna have more like open source and developer focused type stuff. More sort of hands-on tutorial walkthroughs in person and stuff like that. So we're definitely going to have even more fun, but we're also going to amp up our education efforts as well. So we're working on that.
Very cool.
This is a topic we don't usually bring up much, but we love to put you on the spot and make you make a prediction. Where do you see Bitcoin in the next 3 years? How do you see this thing going?
3 years?
Yeah, 3 years or so. Are we maybe post a year, at least a year or two post next halving? How do you see this all playing out? And Dan and I will put ourselves on the spot and make predictions too. But we'll wait for you to do it first.
I'll go 180. 180 top.
180?
Yeah.
Okay. You think we've seen the bottom of this thing? Do you think that it's turned completely broadside at this point?
I think we hit the bottom for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
What makes you say that, out of curiosity?
Just the sentiment, I think, and the way that just seeing things at Swan and the buying habits and behavior, the kinds of questions that we get, it's like you can just tell there's a sentiment change.
Yeah, you can have an inside line there.
Yeah, definitely. I think people just are more comfortable. I think the price doubling helps a lot to make people feel more confident, more comfortable. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like the more it goes up, the more it goes up, because people get more confidence in it.
Somebody tweeted something along the lines of, I think just Bitcoiners DCAing into Bitcoin is buying up almost all of the Coinbase at this point. So all things being equal, you assume the Coinbase gets cut in half 2024. That's a massively bullish movement, even if there's no other interest generally. Just the people keep DCAing the way they've been doing it for the last year or two. It just has to go up. I mean, barring people selling a shitload of it, clearly.
Honestly, on that front, the relative change of the supply compared to, like, let's say the first halving, which was a massive change, and the liquidity levels of Bitcoin were a lot lower then. So the cut in supply had more of an effect because the liquidity wasn't there to compete with, right? So like right now, you could be taking, we could be changing, I don't know the exact number, but hundreds of Bitcoin a day will be less will be produced, right? But the amount of liquidity that comes on the market at any given time can absolutely swamp that.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. So the balance of like the percentage change to the supply, because 92% are already issued, and the amount of liquidity now makes that having not have too much of an effect on the price anymore. So I think you're just going to have a diminishing effect. As these things get smaller,
That makes sense. That makes total sense that you'd have a diminishing impact from the halving because the halving itself is less significant in terms of total supply entry. Now, that doesn't change the fact that like our thoughts on the future, that there is just a tremendously tight noose on the supply of this thing. We say on the show all the time, but I just think even us Bitcoiners can get conditioned into forgetting how inelastic this brick wall really is, and what the meaning and significance and price movement at the margin could look like when you have a new significant swath of demand come in. I mean, this is a small asset class. It's remarkable what it's accomplished, but it is relatively small on the global stage. Back to the 2-year predictions. This is where like my thought on where we're going to be at, it almost feels comical to even throw out a number, because I feel like we could be at 90 or we could be at 1.9 million. Like that's how this thing could move, especially for me, guys, like the headliner, and we beat this all the time on the show, is just how much things are fraying on the global stage. Like I really think this could be a tantalizing global reserve asset that asset managers are salivating over on balance sheets in small hedge quantities in fairly short order. And even if a small percentage of countries move in, look out. Predictions are probably futile. Back to the DCA thing. Just get a seat on this bull and be prepared to ride.
I think I think you're exactly right on that point. And I think it's all about counterparty risk. When some of these larger asset managers start really, really considering counterparty risk, when they understand that, there's like 4 major banks that have failed in the last month and a couple of months, when that really starts sinking in, that maybe there's more contagion out there, and what can I own that has no counterparty risk? This is really the only thing that exists in that realm, short of physical gold, which nobody wants to take actual possession of. So I think that this thing is going to do some magical things in the near future. I'm not 100% sure that we've seen the bottom, but you can never be. But the fact that I don't think we have probably means that we have.
Yeah. But man, Brady, is the value proposition of this thing just illuminated as bright as it's ever been. I sent a tweet thread out the other day. Like when you think about back to a sovereign balance sheet, like this thing's got just robust neutrality. It's censorship resistance, right? There's you can hold it without fear of seizure or anyone freezing or confiscating it. It's got liquidity, ease of use on a global scale, interoperable with all these different currencies. And then just the value accrual, the most obvious of it being an inflation hedge in the middle of a global debt crisis with obvious debasement and inflation risks. It seems so freaking obvious right now. If you happen to be listening and you're still on the fence, get off of it and start taking a position.
It was often asked, how Bitcoin would behave in a market like this, because it was born in 2008. So it wasn't really tested in that market. It was so young for the first 2 or 3 years that you couldn't look at that and draw any conclusions about how Bitcoin might behave in a market like this. But we are seeing Bitcoin rally into extremely questionable macro conditions, and it's uncorrelated with equities for the most part right now. It's very correlated with gold. We're starting to see how it's trading and how the market is viewing Bitcoin, and it is a hedge against potential failure of the fiat system. And that's exactly what it is. And the fact that we're seeing the market treat it that way is extremely bullish. So people are starting to learn and starting to understand, and everything that we're doing helps. Every little bit of this education, every conversation like this helps. And then of course we get massive help from the absolute shit show that is fiat money. So that it does a lot of the marketing for us.
Fiat money with the assist.
Yeah.
Close us out here, Brady. We appreciate your time, man. How do you want to end this one? Give us a handoff to Swan and anything else.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, guys. This was a ton of fun. I've been looking forward to it. Yeah, absolutely. You guys do a great job. And I, in prep, listened to a few episodes over the last few days and just really enjoy it. I'm going to go back and listen to a lot more now. I've taken a break from podcasts, man. I
do the same thing from time to time.
Yeah. I used to just like a fire hose, which is the right analogy, I think, with you guys, right? So it's with a fire hose, I used to just take it. But yeah, you get to a certain point where you hear the same things over and over again. There's just a number of ideas, and you got to cherry pick the right episodes. So, you've got a great archive to choose from. Anyway, again, thanks for having me, man. I think we, talked about Swan and the podcast and all of that stuff plenty. I just encourage you. I'll reiterate the points of that we spoke about earlier, and I loved our conversation about politics and government, and I think it's really important for people to go out and talk to elected representatives. It's really a pretty simple thing to do. Just call the office, get an appointment, or write a letter. It's pretty simple, and I think you can go out and you can make a difference. Like I said, most people don't do that. So the fact that you're reaching out is a big signal to them, their offices, having known people who work there. It makes a difference, makes an impression. So I think Bitcoiners need to reach out and just do this. They're your sats, advocate on behalf of your sats and on behalf of Bitcoin and Bitcoiners and the rest of the world for freedom money.
Yeah, I think that's good advice, and something I should take myself too, because I don't know, maybe I'm too cynical about politics in general, but I just don't. I mean, I think a lot of people just think it doesn't matter what I say.
Yeah, I know.
These people, they don't care. But I'll probably take your advice and do that myself.
Some of these people still take it seriously, and this is why I like decentralization when it comes to government, which makes me more of a, what Republicans at least used to be, which is defending the idea that America is a republic, and that the idea of decentralizing power, send it, to the states, to the municipalities and counties, et cetera, so that more happens, more decisions are made in the local communities as much as possible, right? And so originally the federal government was pretty limited in scope, and to like national defense and a few other things, and it's just kind of grown in scope over time. And in that sense, I guess I'm a conservative, but I don't see it as conservative. I see it as just a smart way to do things. Otherwise, you end up with tyranny.
Right. Yeah. Like it also enables more jurisdictional arbitrage, even here in the United States. Like you could say that jurisdictional arbitrage is the antidote to tyranny, right? If your area is just over the top autocratic and doing all kinds of crazy shit and everybody's exiting, well, then you got to back off that. And the only way we have that sort of testing ground is to have different areas you can be.
Yep.
I agree. States' rights are paramount, and they put a giant sign on people that are making the wrong choices because everybody's exiting. Loud, throat clear, Illinois.
That's not playing out so well.
That's where I see. Oh, sorry, guys. I was just going to say, that's where I see Bitcoin kind of incentivizing the organization of society. It is around something like states' rights, where you're going to have smaller republics, smaller sort of states around the world, and they'll self-organize around certain ways of living, and you'll have lots of choice, and you can go from place to place because you have Bitcoin, which is freedom money, mobility money, and works all over the world, and you can opt in to a new way of living as you see fit, or you can create a new way of living as you see fit. So it's just a much freer world that I see in the future. And there's all kinds of, we could have another whole conversation about this topic. And I love the idea of like how Bitcoin will operate and allow us to live in a world that's much more free, and how we're going to organize legally speaking and all of that. It's fun to think about. I need to write more about it actually, because
let's make it happen.
Let's
make it happen.
Do it again. Appreciate you, Brady.
All right,
Enjoy an evening with your family here. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.